This is not a story about sinister aliens from outer space. This is simply the story of what happened to poor Junius when she found herself much too close to a flying saucer, long enough so she could be analyzed and long enough to cause some strange happenings on that farm. The Shining Cow. By Alex James. Robbie Wyndon acted like his eyes were burning, as if he'd gotten dust or something even stranger into them. Zach Stewart stared sleepily into the bottom of his cracked coffee cup as his wife began to gather the breakfast dishes. Mrs. Stewart was a huge, methodical woman, seasoned to the drudgery of a farm wife. Quite methodically she'd arise every morning at 4 a.m. with her husband, and each would do their respective chores until long after the sun had set on their 40-acre farm. "You've just got to find Junius today, Zach," Mrs. Stewart spoke worriedly. "Lord only knows her condition, not being milked since yesterday morning." "Yeah, I know, Ma," Zach said wearily as he rose from the table. "I'll search for her again in the North Woods, but if she ain't there this time, I give up." A dog suddenly howled outside. There was a brief instant when neither moved, then Zach suddenly exclaimed, "It's Robbie!" and dashed outside. In the light from the open doorway Zach saw the dog creeping along on his haunches, howling and whining, and scratching frantically at his tear-streaming eyes. "Skunk finally got ya, eh boy?" Zach spoke sympathetically as the dog, fawning, came closer. "Stay away, Robbie, stay away now," he ordered the dog. Robbie whined and scratched again, furiously. Zach sniffed cautiously, expecting any moment the pungent smell of skunk fluid to hit his nostrils. He sensed nothing but the clean, fresh smell of the morning air, so he leaned closer. Within a foot of Robbie, he sniffed again. Nothing. He realized it wasn't a skunk that caused Robbie's eyes to burn. He knelt down and took the dog's head tenderly in his rough, calloused hands and examined his eyes. They were bloodshot and watery. He took some water from the well and dashed it into the dog's eyes as Robbie struggled. "Hold still, boy, I'm trying to help ya," Zach soothed. He took out a blue work bandana and wiped tenderly around Robbie's eyes. "What did it, boy? How did it happen?" Zach asked. Robbie merely whined. "What's wrong with him?" Mrs. Stewart, broom in hand, asked from the doorway. "Don't rightly know," Zach patted the dog. "Acts like he got something in his eyes." "Skunk?" "Nah," Zach shook his head. "He don't smell." "Something else?" "Cat?" "No scratches, either. He acts like they're burnin' him, like he got dust or something in 'em." "Well, take him out to the barn and you better get after Junius." "Yeah, Ma." "Come on, Robbie." He led Robbie to the barn and made him lie on a bed of hay in one of the stalls, then returned to the kitchen for his lantern. He put on his thick denim jacket and work cap and turned to his wife. "If she ain't in the woods, I'll come back and get the truck and drive over to the lemurs and see if he's seen her." He left the kitchen and shone the lantern around in the farmyard to get his bearings, then headed for the north end of his farm. He could see the faint glimmer of dawn in the east, more pronounced in the northeast, and even more so due north. He rubbed his eyes. A much brighter glow outlined the treetops in the North Woods, that made the dawn on the eastern horizon look like a dirty gray streak. His first thought was of fire, but there was no smoke, no flame. Zach walked dazedly toward the woods, his eyes glued to the light above the trees. Soon he was in the woods, and he could see the brightness extended down through the trees from the sky, on the other side of the woods. He approached cautiously as the light grew brighter, and came to the clearing where it was most intense. A thick bush obstructed his view, and Zach moved it aside, then uttered a hoarse gasp, as he clutched at his eyes. For a moment he felt he was dreaming. He squinted between the slits of his fingers. The glow was still piercing, but he could see the brightly lit Junius, radiating blue-white light, nibbling at the sparse grass in the clearing. Zach stood transfixed, his eyes widening behind his fingers. He felt the tears and the burning sensation, and squinted tightly, turning his head from the unbelievable scene. Zach didn't remember his return to the farmhouse, or incoherently trying to explain to his wife the scene he had witnessed. A stiff jolt of elderberry wine drove off the jitters and reasoning returned. His wife sat patiently, eyeing him oddly, as Zack muttered over and over again, "It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable." Mrs. Stewart rose. "I'm going out and see for myself. And, Zack, if you're lying to me." Zack jumped from the chair, barring her way. "Believe me, Ma, it's true. Don't go out there. It might be too much for ya." "It's the craziest thing I ever heard," Mrs. Stewart scoffed. "A cow that shines like the sun. Look, Ma, will ya just come with me as far as the pasture? You can see the glow from there, and that might convince ya." Yes, I will." Mrs. Stewart jerked off her apron. "I declare, Zack, I think these chores are getting the best of ya." They walked to the pasture, their eyes on the treetops of the North Woods. A faint glow began to appear. See. Zack pointed, laughing crazily. "Let's get closer. Looks like a fire," Mrs. Stewart said. "Ain't no fire." Zack's tone was angry. "It's Junius and she's all lit up like a Christmas tree." "Zack, now you stop that kind of crazy talk. There's a reason behind everything, and I'm sure there's one for this." "There is a reason, Ma. Junius. She's got the whole clearing lit up like the noonday sun. Lord only knows how she got that way, but she's shining out there like a great big light bulb, only brighter." Mrs. Stewart quickened her pace towards the clearing. "I'm going to see for myself," she said determinedly, "and put an end to this foolish nonsense." "All right, Ma," Zack spoke resignedly, "if your mind's set. But I'm warning ya, y'all better squint your eyes tight. She's too bright to look at. Poor Robbie must have got too good a look at her." Mrs. Stewart approached the clearing ahead of her husband, and moved the same bush aside that had obstructed her husband's view. Her gaze caught the brightly radiating figure of Junius, and Mrs. Stewart screamed, clasping her face with her hands. Zack had his head turned, but he groped for his wife, grasped her arm and led her from the clearing. "It's too crazy to believe, Zack," she whispered in awe. "What are we going to do? What has happened to poor Junius?" "I don't know what happened to her," Zack answered, "but I know what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to call the university and get them scientist fellas down here. You suppose they can get close enough to milk the poor thing?" Mrs. Stewart clasped her hands in frustration. "She's probably in misery." Zack shook his head. "Ain't no tellin' what they're liable to do after they seen her. Most likely they'll want to ship her to the university to examine her and see how she got that way." "Why don't we call the veterinarian?" Mrs. Stewart asked. "It might be some kind of new disease." "It ain't no disease, Ma. It's something nobody in the whole world ever seen or heard of before. I just hope I can convince them university fellas to come down here. Don't you think you better tie Junius so she won't stray? Better wait and see what them scientists say. Besides, if she strays, all we gotta do is follow the light." Zack did the most important chores, and at 8 a.m. on the dot he called the State University. The operator at the switchboard answered sleepily. "Good morning, State University." "Morning, ma'am. I'd like to talk to one of them scientist fellows." "To whom in particular did you wish to speak?" "Any of 'em that ain't busy. I got something important to tell 'em." If I knew what it was about, the operator was becoming irritated, "I'd connect you with the right party." Zack hesitated, reluctant to give his startling news to a mere operator. Instead, he hedged. "Well, who would have charge of things that light up?" "Oh, you want the electrical engineering lab?" "Just a moment, sir." There was a series of clicks and buzzes in the earpiece, then Zack heard a man's deep voice. "Hello." "Hello," Zack replied. "This the electrical engineering lab?" "Yes sir, that's right." "Well, my name is Zack Stewart and I own a 40-acre farm on the Canal Road just outside of Smithville. I'm Professor Donnell, can I help you?" "Yeah." Zack took a deep breath and began. "My cow Junius was missing since yesterday morning, and this morning when I went out to search for her again, I found her." "Mr. Stewart," Professor Donnell's voice was impatient, I'm a very busy man with a heavy class schedule. Why in the world would I care if you found your cow or not? You'd care if you knew how I found her. All right, Mr. Stewart, how did you find your cow, with some new kind of radar? No sir, I found her by following the bright light in the Northwood, and when I got there was Junius lit up like a neon sign. Mr. Stewart, are you drunk? I knew you wouldn't believe me. All I can say is, come see for. Zack heard a sudden click, then an immediate buzzing. Professor Donnell had hung up. He had no sooner replaced the phone when there was a pounding on the door. He opened it and saw 6 state troopers and 4 important-looking gentlemen in civilian dress. A trooper who looked as though he might be in charge spoke to Zack. "Sir, we don't want you or your wife to get panicky, but we have reason to believe that something strange is going on in your woods. These men are from the Atomic Research Laboratory at the university, and they are convinced that a flying saucer has landed out there." "It ain't no flying saucer," Zack spoke wearily. "It isn't?" one of the gentlemen asked, disappointed. "Then what is it?" "It's Junius, my cow." "You're, what?" the state trooper exclaimed incredulously. "Are you nuts?" Angrily, Zack jerked his thumb in the direction of the North Woods. "Just go out there and see for yourself and then tell me I'm nuts." They hurriedly left the house, looking back skeptically at Zack. Zack and his wife stood in the doorway, watching them until they were out of sight in the woods. "You watch 'em come busting back here in a minute, Ma." In a few moments they saw the men scrambling out of the woods, rushing madly for the house, holding their eyes. "Now I don't have to convince anybody," Zack smirked. By the time they reached the porch, they were all talking excitedly and rubbing their eyes. The state trooper in charge pulled Zack aside. "Mister," he asked ominously, "what the hell happened to that cow?" "I don't know," Zack spoke with sarcasm, "just the way I found her." The important-looking civilian bustled past the patrolman and confronted Zack. "I'd like to use your phone." His hands moved nervously. "Where is it?" Zack showed him, and the man rushed to it and hastily dialed a number. "This is Professor Jonathan Sims, nuclear physicist at State University. Put me through immediately to the governor. It's very important." There was a slight pause as Sims drummed impatiently on the phone. "Hello? Hello, Governor? Professor Sims. I'd like a contingent of National Guardsmen around the farm of Zack Stewart on the Old Canal Road. A most astounding thing has happened out here. For the welfare of the public, I urgently request this farm be placed under tight security check at once and the federal government notified immediately." "Hey now, wait a minute, Mr. Zack protested. Sims motioned him into silence, his ear glued to the phone. "Sir," he hesitated, glancing at the group sideways, "you won't believe this until you see it. But we have positive proof a saucer has landed here. Mr. Stewart's cow is radiating intense blue and white light, the kind that has been associated with the glow of flying saucers." Sims paused, listening to the governor. Zack saw him fidget and stick a forefinger in his collar. "Honestly, sir, I am not drunk. The cow is radiating light. See?" Zack grinned at him. "Now you know how I felt." Sims ignored him, concentrating on the phone. "Yes sir, there is a state trooper here." He turned to the one in charge. "He wants to speak to you." The trooper took the receiver. "Hello, Governor. Sergeant Les Johnson of the Highway Patrol." Pause. "That's right, sir. There's a number of people here who can swear to it." "Yes sir." This time the trooper fidgeted. "I seen it too. Blue-white light, yes sir." "No sir, we are not having a drinking party. The light was reported by the pilot of the Continental Airways early this morning and we investigated." "Yes sir." He held the receiver towards Sims. "He wants to talk to you again." The governor was finally convinced something indeed strange was happening at the Stewart place, but being a solid citizen and faithful servant of the people who elected him, he couldn't believe the fantastic story the professor and the trooper told him. He decided to see for himself and rang for a chauffeur after his telephone conversation with Professor Sims. Meanwhile, Mrs. Stewart turned to Sims. will you please tell us if Junius can be milked? I really don't know yet, Mrs. Stewart. I'll have to investigate the area for harmful radioactivity first, then I'll have to check the cow herself. Pardon me. He turned to the phone again. Trying to keep his voice and emotion under control, Professor Sims called his laboratory at the university and ordered, among other technical equipment, a Geiger counter, a gamma-ray detector, a portable lead shield, body and temperature thermometers, a portable X-ray machine, and a dozen pairs of smoke glasses. The equipment arrived within the hour, and Professor Sims distributed it among his assistants with his instructions. It was understood that he alone would approach Junius, wearing his smoke glasses and carrying the protective lead shield, to make the initial test. If his tests proved that Junius could be safely approached, he would go back for the others. "You look like one of them flying saucer Phyllis, yourself," Zack laughed, seeing Professor Sims donned in the lead shield and the dark glasses. Sims waved at the crowd in the farmyard and walked awkwardly toward the glow in the north wood, less pronounced now in the daylight. They watched until his retreating figure disappeared into the woods, and they were still watching the spot for what seemed a long time afterward. One of the assistants fidgeted and looked at his watch. "He's been in there 20 minutes. Wonder what he's doing?" "I hope he's milking her," Mrs. Stewart said hopefully. Zack chuckled as a thought struck him. "What's so funny, Zack?" his wife asked. "Junius," Zack's chuckle bubbled into laughter, "will be the first cow to give radiated milk." Finally, after another 15 minutes, they saw Professor Sims emerge from the woods. As he came across the pasture they could see that his smoke glasses were propped above his eyebrows and he was concentrating on a small notebook in his hand, shaking his head from time to time. When he finally joined the waiting group, he was flooded with questions. He gestured them into silence. "Please, I cannot answer any questions as yet until I have consulted with my assistants. Sergeant Johnson, will you please have your men guard the clearing while we hold the conference? Is it safe to get that close to her?" the trooper asked, unbelieving. "I can assure you that it is. There is just a negligible amount of radioactivity present, and no more ultraviolet rays than there are in an average sun lamp. But you must wear your glasses." Turning to his aides he said, "Come gentlemen," and they followed him into the farmhouse. "Can she be milked?" Mrs. Stewart wailed after them. "What a god-awful situation," Zack muttered, grabbing a pitchfork and heading for the barn. The scientists seated themselves around the big dining room table and faced Professor Sims. "Gentlemen, it's the most amazing thing that ever happened. The cow is glowing out there like a miniature atomic pile, and under the circumstances as we know them, should be deader than a doornail, but there she stands, shining like the morning sun.